Thank you. I appreciate it. So today's session is going to be about CCRPI and student growth percentiles. Okay, so the way our CCRPI score is calculated is based off of this calculation right here. So we have student mastery. Student mastery would be it weighs 30%. ELA has a weight of 11.25. Math has a weight of 11.25. Science 3.75. Social studies 3.75. That's how we get our 30%. Okay, so mastery, our students achieving. We have a beginning learner. Any students that score in the beginning learner category, we earn 0 points. Developing, we earn a half a point. Proficient, we earn a whole point. And distinguished, we earn 1.5 points. Okay? Any questions? Thank you. Progress, this is where we show student growth. This is worth 35% of our score. So we have, if a student shows growth between 1 and the 29th percentile, we earn 0 points. 30 through 40, we earn a half a point. 41 through 65, we earn a full point. Any growth over 65, which is 66 through 99, we earn 1.5 points. Then we have closing gaps. This is worth 15%. This is where we look at our subgroups. If our subgroups, their performance, if it's not improved, we do not earn any points, it's 0. If they make progress, but they do not meet the target, we earn half a point. If they met the target, we will earn a full point. For our economically disadvantaged students, our English learners, our special needs students, if we have 6% meet, we will earn 1.5 points. Readiness, okay, 20%. They look at their literacy, student attendance, and beyond the core. So when we look at these calculations, majority of our score comes from what?
Progress.
Progress, yes, right?
Yeah.
And when we look at mastery, progress, and closing the gaps, this is all milestone scores. Okay, student growth percentiles. This is where we look at apples to apples. So if we have a student that scored 419 on their milestones, they look at all the students in the state with that score and they compare their growth to their next year. Our growth percentiles range from 1 to 99. Low percentiles indicate lower academic growth. Higher percentiles indicate higher academic growth. This is a video is going to explain student growth percentiles in more detail.
Georgia educators, parents, and students are hearing a new term in their schools, student growth percentile. SGPs are being used in connection with many initiatives such as school accountability, educator effectiveness, and instructional improvement. So what are they? In a basic sense, student growth percentiles describe how much academic progress a student has made relative to other students across Georgia with a similar achievement history. While test scores provide a snapshot look at whether or not a student is meeting or exceeding academic expectations at a single point in time, SGPs illustrate how much a student is growing from year to year. Let's take a closer look. Here is Miss Smith's 5th grade class. All of these students participated in state assessments last year in the 4th grade. Some earned high scores, others scored lower. Near the middle is Danielle. When measuring Danielle's individual growth, it wouldn't make sense to compare her with her classmates who had a variety of different prior scores. So we'll look outside this classroom for other students in Georgia with similar 4th grade scores. These are the academic peers against which Danielle's 5th grade progress will be measured. When Danielle earns a new score at the end of the 5th grade, she receives a student growth percentile of 65, which means she grew more than 65% of her academic peers. Her academic peers earned different 5th grade scores, which resulted in different SGPs. Some of them demonstrated low growth, some demonstrated typical growth, and others demonstrated high growth. Each of the students in Ms. Smith's class has an academic peer group drawn from students across the state to ensure their growth is being compared to academically similar students. Hannah scored high on this year's test, but she demonstrated low growth. Even though she is high achieving, she'll need to be challenged to keep pace with other high achieving students. John didn't meet expectations on this year's test. However, he demonstrated high growth compared to his academic peers. And if he continues to grow at this level, he is on the path to meeting expectations in the future. With SGPs, all students, low and high achieving, have the opportunity to demonstrate all levels of growth. That's the great thing about SGPs. They give us an indication of how much students are progressing and whether or not they are on the path to meeting or exceeding expectations in the future. SGPs provide a new, insightful way of understanding students' academic progress. Used in conjunction with other measures of student achievement, SGPs are a powerful tool for understanding and improving student performance in Georgia. For more information about student growth percentiles, visit us at gsgm.gadoe.org.
Okay, so when we're calculating SPGs, we look at different things. We look at median, mean, and number and percentage of growth. So when we look at the median, right, we have a series of numbers. We order them in a range from least to smallest, from least to largest, and then we pick that middle number. Mean, we take an average of a group of numbers, and the percentage of growth, this is where we look at the typical growth to the high performing growth, and we take the average of that. Okay, so when we look at the median growth percentile, this is usually used, this is one method of combining student growth percentiles for a group of students to utilize a mean, okay? So again, that numerical list of numbers, right? We take that and we find that middle number. If our number is even, we take the two middle numbers and we find the average of those and we would get our median. TEKS use mean growth percentile, meaning they're going to take the average of the group of numbers. So now CCRPI. This is the third method of combining students to utilize percentage of students demonstrating typical or high growth. So when we look at growth, we have low growth. The percentages will range from 1% to 34. We have typical from 35 to 65, and high from 66 to 99. This is just an example of mean, median, and typical to high growth, how they calculate it. Any questions from me so far in regards to this? So, levels of growth. While student growth percentiles are produced for individual students, one method of combining SGPs for a group of students is to utilize the median. The median growth percentile is the middle value of the group's SGPs. So 3 levels of growth. Red is below 35, green between 35 and 65, gold or yellow if their percentage is above 65. Okay, on this slide, this is real data for Sandy Springs. So these are math teachers that we currently have in our building, and we have their scores for 2017, 2018. If you see they're missing a bar, that means they weren't here for 2017. Okay? So in order to calculate the SGP, we have to have at least 2 years worth of data. So for 7th grade teachers in science, I'm sorry, for 8th grade teachers in science, they wouldn't be able to calculate an SGP because we don't have a test that they take in the 7th grade. So just take a minute right here to look at this data, and I want to have a quick conversation about this data. Let me know what you see. Any thoughts or questions?
What was the cutoff between the low and like average? What was that number? Was it like 45?
34. 34 is low. Okay. Typical start at 35 to 65.
Okay.
Most are typical. Okay, I can't even see the numbers. But
so this first teacher in 2017, 53, 2018, 58. This teacher, 2017, 26, 58.5, 31, 44.5. This teacher do not have any data from 2017, but in their first year teaching here, we have 57. This teacher 57, 42, 45, 31, no data, 55, and this is Sandy Springs as a whole.
I want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly. So you're saying that the purple was that math teacher's growth percentile last year for that group of students, or is the purple the growth percentile for those students last year, and now the green is what they got this year?
This is the teacher.
Uh-huh.
This is their student growth percentile for this group of students.
From last year?
From 2017.
Gotcha.
Now this is their growth for the students in 2018.
So that shows that they helped them grow that year from last year.
This showed that this student, this teacher was able to move her students.
Yes. Okay.
Is that all 3 grade levels?
Yes, it's a combination of teachers. Okay, so looking at this, what can we say about our math data?
I just want to know what this
We're in
doubling
the typical
situation.
range for the majority.
We're in the typical range, okay.
Yeah, the 26 to 58 is interesting.
The 26, what's interesting about it?
Because you
Yeah.
are
It was-
double.
Yeah, the fact that's that's a huge difference. I'm wondering, I'm not
That's
trying to think of who it is, but like, was it a first year teacher who then got their feet wet? Was it a new content and then they understood it?
Or different grade level.
Yeah,
Or
or just,
maybe it's like the
that
second
is
year
just very
spaces.
startling.
Okay,
It's a
well, that's something to-
dramatic
okay.
difference.
And a lot of times.
What about over here?
What were they teaching? I mean, because it depends on which
They're teaching,
students.
this is math
I
teachers.
know, but is that level, is it below level, is it above level math?
So the idea with
The
SGP is
student growth percentile isn't based on what the level the student tests at.
Just where they
It's
start working at that.
it's comparing students that are on the same level. How did they score compared to those students from last year?
But you can also look at it this way, the fact that these over here made such a significant growth, and the far one did not. So sometimes the far one may or may not be a gifted class, because it's harder to make those kids grow because they're already high to
well, but
begin
with SGP it doesn't matter because
No,
you're comparing them to other gifted kids.
No,
that-
it doesn't matter, but it's still more of a challenge.
If they're
And so
at
if kids have more room to grow, you can bring them up more,
Like if
so.
they're already
But
at
just keep in mind with
99%,
SGPs, we're
It's still
comparing apples to apples.
I know that.
So if you have a student that's really struggling, right, and they scored a 512, they're only being compared to students that scored a 512. So
No, I know that.
it's safe to assume that they're all struggling at the same
Yeah, no,
level.
I know that, but I'm just.
So
making-
although it's hard to grow tag students, it's still possible.
possible,
So
oh, yeah.
if you have a particular tag student that isn't showing growth, then we need to look at what we need to do differently to help them grow to compare to other kids in the state.
No, I know, I was just making, y'all told me to make observations.
Yeah, no,
So, but
it's just
based on-
conversation. It's just conversation. Okay,
But based on, so when you're looking at the student growth percentile, even if they're tagged, they're being compared to other tagged
Well,
students.
yeah.
Someone has to get that 99.
Oh,
There
I know,
has to
there's
be.
still
So
plenty of room to grow.
there's
Yeah.
plenty of room to grow, so you can't say it's harder to make them grow because someone's growing.
No, it's not, I'm just saying that may account for that class. I'm just saying. And then these classes where they have been able to grow more, you have more of a gap that
But
they
it's not
needed
based
to.
on the amount of growth, right? So a tax student in Valdosta, Georgia, or wherever else in North Georgia, they're looking at their typical growth for all those students. So it's not so much, so to your point you're trying to make is that, I'll use myself for example, like I could probably lose weight a lot easier than somebody who's skinny, right? Because I have more weight to lose,
Yeah.
right? But that's not what we're comparing.
No, I know what you're saying, and I'm not trying to be difficult, so I'll just be quiet now. I'm sorry.
No, it's good
She
conversation.
was just guessing, I guess,
Yes.
as to why that class seemed to be doing, it was more even, the bars are more even than the other classes, maybe.
And like I said, regardless of what y'all want to say, if a child is already performing high, I'm not saying it's harder on us, I'm just saying that you may not see as big of a gap growth as you would with someone who has more room to grow.
But that's not what those numbers are showing.
Okay, I'm just.
That's
I
what we were
understand what
talking
you're saying,
about.
but
I
that's what those
understand.
numbers are showing.
Okay, because I am not a mathematician. Okay, a child scores 99% one year, and the next year they scored 99% again. They didn't grow. I know they're being compared to everybody else.
And maybe a slide
Does that
later on
hurt
will
us?
show they could still fall into that
Yeah.
typical growth range
Does that
based
hurt
on
us?
no, it depends on how their other peers across the state perform. Because they still could fall into that typical growth range even if they have that same score.
So when we look at the math data for Sandy Springs,
No, they don't.
we have some growth, right?
Right.
So now we go,
Good.
I have a question, and this might be really dumb, and I'm not a numbers person, but the thing that I'm confused about, I get that it's the teacher, but it's a new group of students, right? Because
No.
it's
They're comparing the same
2017
students.
to 2018.
no, they're different students. So we're looking at how the teacher is making their students grow.
Yeah, and then so it's not the same thing.
It's not the same students. We're looking at how they're making their students grow compared to other students at the same levels across the state.
Right.
That's
So
what,
some
that's,
teachers are doing a better job than others. That's what that graph looks like.
yes. Some students are making their kids grow no matter how high or low they are.
Okay, that's what that
Right?
graph
So some teachers are consistent with their growth. Some teachers, they learn, it could be they learn the strategy on how to meet the needs of their students and they're growing. Then we have some teachers, they have low growth, so what's going on here, right?
What can they learn from the teacher on the other side?
Yes. And that goes into PLCs also. So here goes our ELA data. Okay, so look at our ELA data. These are our teachers here, and this is Sandy Springs. What do you notice about our ELA data?
Went down.
There's some teachers.
Right, but look, when we look at our weight,
This is the ELA bunch, so they need a minute to process.
One more. I was trying to focus on the one positive teacher.
The one positive teacher.
Well, there are two positive teachers.
We're like, everybody
We're not growing very much.
Yeah, I don't appreciate that. I'm done.
but why?
Higher growth numbers.
Why would you say you're not growing that much? Why?
Well, maybe I'm still looking at it wrong then.
I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking why. Why do you think?
Because I was thinking that we want the bar on the right to be higher than the bar on the left.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, and of all of those up there, I'll have two, the two show growth.
So let me jump in if you don't mind. And I do agree that you guys need an opportunity to process this, but I also want to shape this conversation, okay? The purpose of this is not to, ooh, look how bad you guys are. We know these are ELA teachers. This is horrible. You guys are doing bad. It's all your fault. That's not the purpose of this, and I don't want anybody to receive it. But as human beings and the great educators you are, you're going to naturally take this like, wow, okay, what am I going to do? And that's actually kind of good because that means that you really want to improve. We have conversations about these black spots because they're names, right?
Right.
And we don't want to put anybody in a situation where they're felt to feel less than because the names show up. However, I do think it's important that as a school, we get to the point where we can share this information. Not for the point of being like, oh man, you're horrible, but like, wow, well, tell me what you did, right, to achieve that growth. Or maybe here's some things that I can help you with because I did better. And so to be able to calibrate and communicate and collaborate with each other about how we're performing in an open, honest conversation. This stuff is public, right? The school score is public. I mean, they put it out in the AJC. Internally, we need to talk about here individually. And this isn't about TEKS and evaluations and you doing bad. This is how we can all get better. I want to say one more thing before we get to questions, and I had this conversation with Matt. When we look at these numbers, when we look at CCRPI, we all know there's several factors that go into those scores, those student growth profiles. A lot of them are external, right? Whether it be environmental, whether it be the system. We know that. And they're going to live in this bucket here. There are some things within this school that are internal that we can control. And that's where we're going to live when we have these conversations. Because we'll get caught up, and it's natural, like, oh man, that's bad. Yeah, but if the kids did, or if this hadn't happened, we know those things exist. I acknowledge that. But let's keep those here. For the purpose of this conversation, we want to be where the factors that we can control, all right? And have conversations about that. Because it's not about personal, because I think the year before, to be honest with you, it was flipped, right? I think math was on the bad side of things and ELA was on the good side of things. That might be one of those other external factors that across the state, ELA trended low. We know that. But internally, is it good to have this information? Is it good to share best practices when we look at higher growth profiles than other? Do they tell the entire story? Not all the time. We do know that. But it's still something that we need to start with here. So I just wanted to kind of shape that for you. I know we had some questions.
It's good to see that even though we have a lot lower red bars, it's not like there are huge gaps going down, you know? I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying that.
Well, I'll share this, and this is not a gloom and doom session. It did impact us, right? So we're looking at already our CCRPI for this coming year, which we'll get next month. We were already on that borderline. We had conversations about being in a situation where, do we have to take all these assessments? Do we have to do this? Do we have to do that? We were 1.5 points away from, yes, we are going to have to take it, to no, we get to decide what we need to do. And when we perform, when our students perform, and I'm not saying ELA, to the point where we're not growing, and I think really our numbers really, not so much achievement, they're similar, the amount of growth that we achieved wasn't there, then we are going to be in that situation next year. But I'm confident that you guys, this team, this group of teachers, are the ones that are ready and prepared to do that work, because it's not going to be easy. It's not. I hope you want to be a part of that team that's going to do that work. Because we can go up, and I know we can go up. But just projections, and it's not final, we're probably going to fall below that 70 CCRPI rating. Well, I did this last time, so one more question, Ms. Payne, then I'm allowed them to move through so they can go
I'm just
through.
trying to think about, you know, what was different about last year versus the year before. And talking about assessments, one thing that sticks out in my mind is the number of assessments that our kids were required to take last year.
Yeah.
We're going to keep that in this bucket, right?
Okay, I'm just letting, I mean.
That's this bucket.
Could have an impact.
We're talking about this bucket.
So yeah, it took away a lot of instructional days.
Is the 2018 score the score that was shared with us last spring, or is that the scores that have just come out?
CCR.
They're the new ones. They're new.
Our growth model.
Like,
These are new.
These are the new. The red ones are the new ones for
the brand new ones.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have not seen these red ones, but we were told the blue one last year.
Correct.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I know it went down, but still, there's nobody in a low growth percentile. Is that, am I looking at it wrong? Because 35 to 65 is typical growth, is that correct?
Yes.
So there was no low growth. you know, only typical in a few or in the actually high growth range. So it's not like, I know we're going, you know, it's not what it was, but at least they are still growing. Just,
Good point.
just
Just not as much as we want this time.
Thank you.
Will we be
When
told?
we're comparing it to their peers.
Okay.
Yeah. Last question and then.
Well, it's more of a statement, suggestion type. And obviously I'm new here, so I don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes with this, but one of the things that I know that could help us, especially when you work in your PLCs, and us as connections teachers can also help with this as well, is if we try to connect or have our goals align with some of the lower scoring areas. So for example, ELA, maybe we try to support that in our classrooms as far as having, well, I use my classroom as an example, writing script and making sure that the language and the verbiage is correct and things like that to help support, those other things in that area. And just collaborating cross-curricular would, I think, will help that. I don't know, I said that just for hopefully the good of the group.
Yeah, I think that's a great example and something that we can do. I do know that there are so many shooting targets that the teachers have to deal with, and sometimes we don't want to get to the point where we're adding so much to the plate, nothing gets done. And I think where we're going and where we're headed right now is, are we actually teaching the standards, and are the students mastering the standards, and are we reteaching those standards? If we live in that bucket, and like I said at the beginning of the year, if we live in that bucket, and we'll see the results at the end of the year. Not to say that's something that we can't do or can't happen, but I'm looking for long-term sustainable ideas that we help build upon, and I know we can't do all this work in 1 year. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was just curious as to how we find out what our SGP was last year.
Ooh.
Like how is that? Are we
From
finding?
like 2 years ago or something?
No, from like right now. Like what's the new one that just came out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
For your
Yes, for me. Yes.
Okay, so 4 levels of growth used in the CCRPI calculation. Median student growth percentile below 30, again, no points. 30 to 39, 0.5, 40 to 65, 1 point. Above 65, we get 1.5 points. Okay, achievement gap, closing the gap. So the state will calculate school level improvement targets defined as 3% of the gap between an individual school's baseline and 100%. Improvement targets will be calculated based on the academic achievement rates in ELA, math, science, and social studies, and progress towards English language proficiency. Schools will be expected to meet the improvement target based on the prior year's performance. Flags will indicate if the target was met. So a red flag, that means performance did not improve, so 0 points are earned. Yellow flag, progress made, but target not met, 0.5 points. Green flag, target met, earn a full point earned, 1 point. Okay, so gap closure, okay? So again, 0 points mean they didn't meet. 1 means they did. 0.5 means they made progress, but still did not meet. So these are our subgroups. So we have Asian Pacific Islander. When we look at ELA, they did not meet. Math, they did meet. Social studies and science, we don't have enough data, so we don't have any information here. African American, Black students, ELA, 0, math, 1, social studies, 0.5, science, 1. Hispanics, ELA, 0, math, 0, social studies, 0, science, 1. American Indian Alaskans, nothing, no information, not enough information. White or Caucasian students, they earned 1 full point in each content area. Multiracial, half a point in ELA, 0 in math, not enough data. Students with disabilities, they did not meet or make growth in any content area. English language learners, they did not meet or make growth in ELA, math, and social studies. However, they did meet in science. Economically disadvantaged, 0 for ELA, they met in math, 0 social studies, and we earned the full 1.5 for science. So if we could just take a minute and look at that information.
And to clarify with English learners, because it's come up in two groups, English learners are not just the kids in the ESOL classroom. These are also your monitored students. And then for 2 years after monitoring, they still fall into those English learner group. So if a kid exited out in 3rd grade and from the ESOL program, at 6th grade, they're still hitting that subgroup. So these are kids that are sitting in the gen ed ELA classes.
So can you guys share what this data says to you?
Math is closing the gap better, and we just gotta get our kids reading.
Okay, so math is closing the gap in
Science.
almost all subgroups.
Because reading can impact social studies as well.
Yes.
The science and
Science.
social studies is only 8th grade.
Mm-hmm. So what about
horizontally?
So what about our students with disabilities? Why is it that they can't show any growth? Right there. Why do you think that when we think about our students with disabilities, we have some in the MI/MO classrooms, right? But we also have some that are dually served and they're gifted. But why we have 0 in all of these categories?
I think they can show growth. I don't know that they're being challenged as much as they could be. But
Okay.
I mean, they can show growth. But our expectations of what they can do should probably be a little higher.
Okay, now explain to me again, the gap closure, that means that the gap between where the majority of the school is versus these, is that how that's done?
I'm sorry, Ms. Payne?
They're like peers.
Okay, yeah, so can you explain the gap again? The gap is between what and what? They're like peers, is that what you're saying?
Everything is compared
Yeah.
amongst their peers.
I have a question. The kids who are dually served, do they count twice?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the kids.
So
that-
even race, if they have like different categories.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. The kids that are dually served, if there's not as many, like we said, our dually served gifted kids, if there's not as many of them as there are lower kids, is it, they have to pull up the whole thing? You're trying to say, is that how?
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Okay.
About the students with disabilities, my question is that across the whole gamut, or are they, I mean, it could be any disability because there's such a range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A huge range.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps, I know it's against.
So these are kids who took the milestones.
Would you say that overall?
Yes,
all
so
of them
any
are
student with
those
disability that took the milestones.
Right.
Yes. So we know.
But there could be disparate levels.
Mhm.
I mean, but they're all lumped into one category, no matter what, right?
Yes, they're all lumped. Once they're targeted as having a disability, yes, they're in this category, right? But isn't it odd that they didn't even make improvements?
But individually, could
Why is
some
that
of
odd?
them?
Why is that?
Because to me, it's such a, like you said, it's such a large range. I'll just give an example. I had a student that was in MID, and she took the test, I believe, last year. That student was probably reading on a pre-K level, but she took the test, I believe, on grade level. So when you look at that, it's hard to see growth.
So my question would be, as teachers, right? What are we doing in our classrooms or with the data to try to close the gaps for these students?
Let me again, we'll move on. We're not going to answer and solve this problem here in this room. That's not perfect. We're not going to figure out why. There's a lot of dynamics to this platform that we can question about, superintendent question about, everybody in the state questions. At the bottom line, it does show where we're making growth, where we're achieving, and where we're not achieving. Bottom line. And that's what we need to look at. Is that useful information for us? Yes, it is. I understand this is very sobering information, but at the same time, those external factors, those things that could not or maybes or wants to, we know those things do impact student learning. I'm not going to even say they don't. But there is a whole bucket of other items, not based on that individual ELA teacher or that individual grade level or that individual content, that go school-wide that we can do to help improve these numbers. And so that's just the purpose of this conversation, to build off of, when we get to our PLCs, how we're going to break down and look at some of our student data and realize why it is important, because it impacts us more than we realize. And I don't know that everybody knows the depth of how this impacts us, but it does. And again, I don't want us to be like, well, I'm doing this for that end goal. I think if we chunk this and we work on those standards, and we hear a little bit about standards mastery later on, then we'll see success at the end. But we have to know who those students are, right? So we're not just aiming aimlessly in the air.
Yes, one more question.
I'll talk to you after.
Okay, fine. Okay. Okay, this was information that was shared with you last year. These are our subgroups again. This was the state's target. This is how we performed. And this was the goal that we set for ourselves. The previous slide shows what we did. I apologize that it's not in the same format as this, but the previous slide showed if we met or we didn't meet.
So what are the different colors mean?
Huh?
What do the different colors mean? I can figure out red and green.
So red, they did not meet.
Green did.
They met. They grew, but they did not meet.
Grew but did not meet. Okay.
So this right here, this would have earned the 0.5, like how we talked about on the other.
Okay.
This red, we would have gotten nothing, and then that's growth. So ELA and math data.
With the Hispanic and the economically disadvantaged, we missed it by like less than a percentage, like less than a point. So it's like we didn't make it, but it's not like the bottom two.
We were close,
Well,
yeah.
like, yeah, I guess even ELLs are pretty close as well, but I don't.
So
Yeah, I think those are numbers to be proud of.
So that means in ELA we did.
And this is not this is not to beat anyone up. This is just showing us, where we are, and this is how, we set goals so that we can grow as a school to better support our students. So this is by no means saying that anyone isn't doing their job, so please don't take it like that.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to like I've heard like some things that teachers have said during this session that haven't been very positive, and I think that it's good for like our school culture to like not beat each other up or not assume like it's other teachers' faults. Because I see everyone's lesson plans, and like I talk to all the ELA teachers, and everyone is working their butts off. So like I know like it's easy to say, well, this teacher, like someone said something about one teacher must be working super hard. Like I think every teacher in here is working super hard, and I just think we should all appreciate each other. Like not to get mushy or silly, but I think that it's important for us to be positive with one another.
I agree. Thank you. Okay, so this is an example of a fifth grade students. They took the milestones in 2016. This is their data. It's comparing 2015 and 2016. So on our y-axis, it shows achievement levels. On the x-axis, it shows their growth. So this student right here in this upper left-hand corner, this student in 4th grade scored distinguished 715, but in 5th grade scored 569, which is a proficient level. So according to this, it shows that this child can achieve, right? They scored very well, but they didn't grow. Okay? In our building, which student you think this generally represent? Yeah, tag, right? So we know sometimes we have some of our advanced students, if the teacher don't say anything at all, that student will still achieve, right? When we come over here, this student scored 715 in 2015. 2016, they scored 725, right? So they've made the maximum amount of growth they can make on this assessment. I'm sorry, they achieved the highest they can on this assessment, but it also showed that although your achievement is high, you can still grow, right? We're doing something. Someone is doing something to make these students grow. In this lower left-hand corner, they took the math, scored 423. 2016, they scored 391. Right here, they did not achieve, and they did not grow. Over in this area, we have 423 and 564. Their achievement is still low, but at least they grew. They grew a lot, right? So if we were to take this information and split it into 4 quadrants, right? This quadrant is going to show students who have high achievement, right? And their growth is high. This quadrant right here will show that their achievement is low, but they're still growing. Their achievement is high, no growth. Their achievement is low and low growth, right? So if I were to split this down the middle, we want to move our kids this way, right? The reality of it is, some kids only score proficient, right? But if we can get them to grow, we're making good progress. And that's our whole goal is to try to meet the need of our students so that we can see that they're growing. The Georgia DOE did some studies, and they said that a child who showed no growth, typically they struggle to maintain the score that they had. But a child who shows growth, who can grow, they normally will excel along their educational journey. So just something to think about when we are thinking about our kids, about growing. I know we feel that, you know, we get a kid that come into our 6th grade class and they're doing 8th grade work, right? We're like, what else can we do to them? It is a challenging task, but there is something we can do to make them grow, because we can see across the state it's possible, right? So to me, when we're looking at this, let's look at the whole child. What can we do? A good conversation we had in one of the other groups is sometimes just getting to know our students a little better can help increase this, right? We get to understand our students. You know, a teacher said they just realized their child was homeless. One of their students are homeless. So now if that teacher take a different approach with that child and understand that child a little better, maybe that child will be willing to learn, you know, work a little harder for that teacher, knows that that teacher care, and we can see some growth. And, you know, using the information that we collect in PLCs to help our students grow. Because I would be honest, I would be impressed with this child right here. I know their achievement is low, right? But at least they're showing growth, right? So this is still something that we can praise this child about. So now you can get your computers. You can take them out. If you do not have, we're going to go into SLDS. If you do not have data, we may need you to sit with someone who has data in SLDS.
Yes.
Yes, that's what we're looking at now. So you're probably looking. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. You should have data.
So like, kind of like, yeah.
From last year.
We are all coming to you.
So this is, I was in there already from our last session. So you can go in tag and then you click on tag. Yes, so go to tag and then, sorry, I have to log
I think
back
it's a little
in.
suitcase. I think it's
Yeah,
a little suitcase.
it's, in the upper right is a suitcase that says tours and then you click Georgia
So really quick, this paper that Ryman is handing out, can I have your attention please? Just for a second. This paper that Ryman is handing out on the front, it shows you different buttons you can click and what information you would see, okay? This is an example of state, but when you look inside of your SLDS, you can see your individual classes and your students' information. If you flip to the back, the information that we spoke on here, that's when you see it in your SLDS, you'll read it the same way. Make sense? On the back, look, right here. So you'll read it the same way. So this quadrant up here, high achieving, low growth, high achieving, high growth, low achieving, high growth, low achieving, low growth. Okay? I think it says it on your quadrants. Click on the
How do
bubbles.
we get to that thing though where you have the drop downs? Or
So
have you got-
once you're in there,
right
click
here.
on growth model.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
No, if you go to growth model, you'll see the kids from last year.
No, I'm going back. I can go back.
You can look at it from comparing Fulton County to different counties in the state. You can look at it, all the schools in Fulton County, or you can look at it individual students.
I don't understand. There was more here, or is this?
There's more.
I didn't have that Like I taught 5 classes out of 10, so I would have 10 rosters. I need what I want now.
First kids. I have them
Yes, that we're growing students, yes. Yes. And I think, first class and ELA.
At the end of the year, we have to accumulate all those changes to get to 3% or more.
Yes. That's my understanding of this kind of.
I understand the 2018.
Those are the questions. So like my, whenever I understand how it works, my 2018 data shows how my kids last year, all the scores are delayed. So this will show, so I'm not understanding, like for last year. Oh, I don't know what to tell them, but it's showing that showing, but it's not, it's showing that I have like 30 sections.
Oh, because you, okay, so we're
I think.
It's just the whole class.
So it's okay, because like I should have 10 rosters, but it's like 30. But like it's more than it's just last year. So where's my Caesar got in the 27th? Because the last year they told me my number was last year, but my number that they gave me, I wrote down didn't match any of the ones up there, so I couldn't figure out what my number was. On mine, she's like, thank you. Yeah, because I just want to know, I want to compare myself year to year, but I didn't see mine.
Yeah. No, I'll pull that up.
What is the measure of like, was it milestones at
So kids take milestones every April. So like the number that she's getting for me is the percentage of growth my kids had from their 5th grade year to the 6th grade year last spring. So how did I meet kids who came into me in August of last year with whatever score was in the grade?
like a 1 year last?
Yeah. And so I'm finding out now in October how I did. Which is really frustrating because I taught completely different seniors. So I really wanted to know in the summer to see which year which style of my teaching I had. So that's why let's make sure anal number because I want to know if I should go back and actually 4 or if I just do like
Sounds like half the year is gone.
yeah, and I'm frustrated.
You have a reading one. There's reading.
There is reading, and so in here, you get evaluated here. Like what you showed us there? Yes, it is under the yoke. Because the kids on milestones, reading milestones and writing, and those two work together to go into our milestones. Whereas like math, we take one test.
I think she had actually a really good point, but I think those that I don't think they're taking on level.
Oh, 100%. Back when I started, there were like 10 reasons I got out, and this is reason like number 10, so it was student notable. But was that I knew that they were moving to this, and I didn't know how much, like percentile is well, and also they didn't know, like my 5th-year approach is that 30 days doing it, and then I was like, I don't know. But yeah, what always frustrated me we're expected to differentiate to them, but they don't differentiate. And then, like, I got in trouble one year because that's the language it wasn't on standard, but they can't read grade level text.
Were they using language or were they ELA?
Especially, I'm not as
So that would be nice, yeah, when you store
it takes milestones is kind of the key. That's what all your output growth is. I think I would explain back there.
CCRPI goes to one of the gap. It's like a point of error.
If they show growth on access, then
Yeah, it goes towards that, but it doesn't go to your students.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of like this is Like how they go to school.
The acronym is college ranking. Is it like a ranking?
Now it makes sense.
Well, yeah. College readiness determination. Oh, yeah, something like that.
And
now Dr. Parker and I both took turns sitting with him and saying, oh, yeah.
I like this
That's totally true. That's what it is. I forgot. Yes, that's it. First semester. And that's why they're coming. And don't forget, like, your kids, because each process actually, like, I'm missing kids that didn't show up at certain days. They didn't happen. Take it to here before. They're not on there. So because they go
Well, that's my question, right, is the gap. So when we look at even Percentile, because, right, reading at a first grade, second grade level, we can certainly show you, but there's no way we can get this to second grade a year.
No, exactly. That's where the SGPs, we don't need that. We just need them to show compared to
But the problem is, I hear you, but they're taking the milestone at a sixth grade reading, and they're reading at a second grade.
But they're only being compared to the kids that's what, like, now you
realize that's not. Well, that's a fair.
So that's where that one is. Right up to another kid that's in the same situation.
I got you.
She
all three.
So I don't, on whatever
Well, one that I had in mind, my cousin asked you to do.
Like only a couple is like a very small.
yeah, it's the one or two so like when she was picking up one of her kids, she goes, this kid did not go down. He was in the 9th and 10th. So we got even though that's how you want it. So they take all your kids.
This is that thing where they
Actually, classroom, I like one. We provide classes for all the kids. There's a intervention, right? Oh,
And then they're like, oh, and it cut off.
That's a good feeling.
I think they were supposed to all of it. Yeah, it's all they took all that into. When we first proposed it, the original video showed that there were some hearing cases just saying what I don't know, I actually kind of
Because I think that I still don't know. That's like figuring out how to I just like to figure out how to those things.
Hey guys! Hi! To my attention.
In that program.
Wait.
In that program.
I do that.
So Ms. Booker brought it to my attention, people are giving me dirty looks because it's past the time. So thank Ms. Booker for bringing it to my attention. I'm sorry, we are done. Wait a minute, before you leave, thank you so much for your questions, for being engaged, and